Greetings. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks, Sr., your host, and this is Community Focus. Today, we're very fortunate to have with us an exemplary person, Dr. Maurice Byrd, a retired educator in the Zion Elementary School system. Good morning, Dr. Byrd.
Good morning.
We're very happy that you've taken time from your busy schedule, especially in your retirement years here, to come down to the studio and tell our listening audience all there is to know about Maurice Byrd and the educational system. Lake County is approximately 800,000 people, but I don't know how many people up at 5 o'clock this morning to listen to the program. But those that are up are going to call their neighbors and let them know that we have an important, very educational program this morning. Dr. Byrd, we'd like for you to tell a listening audience, first of all, a little bit about your personal and professional background.
Sure. I'm from Hampton, Virginia.
Okay.
And I went there through all my elementary years. My family's still in Virginia, basically, most of my family.
Okay.
And I attended Hampton University, graduating with a degree in music education. I was always involved in music from a young child, playing the piano in church and being involved in music in the community. And so it was kind of a natural segue that I would major in music. So I finished in Hampton in music and received a fellowship for graduate study to the University of Illinois, hence my location here in Illinois. And I came to Illinois to work on a master's degree, and after finishing that in the year, I got a job teaching music in Waukegan. So I came to the Waukegan Public Schools, where I taught for 3 years prior to moving over to Zion. And after that, I've been in Zion ever since. First 15 years as a music teacher, and then the last 15 years of my career as an elementary school principal, as well as assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. So that's sort of my trajectory over the years.
Tell us about some challenging experiences that you've had in your musical career, especially in Zion.
Sure. It's teaching music was something that I enjoyed from the very beginning. I initially started in school, wanted to be a history major. I always loved history. And but because I had the music background, was always involved in choir and accompanying the choir and singing, I decided to move into music. And what I enjoyed about teaching music was general music in the elementary school is a program that's offered to all students.
Okay.
So you have a chance to see all the kids in the building, which can be pretty exciting. But even more so, many times kids are not successful, maybe not at their reading or math, or they might struggle with some of their academics. But everybody can find a place in music to be successful, whether it's singing or playing an instrument or being involved in the plays and other activities that we do in general music. So I found that to be very rewarding, that kids always wanted to come, they always enjoyed coming, and they always look forward to it. So it really was a teacher's dream to be able to teach something that you didn't have to deal with a lot of discipline issues or deal with a lot of rejection. The students were always very, very happy to spend their 1 hour a week that they had with me. Then I really enjoyed that and had no intentions of leaving teaching music. But as I became more involved in the school and activities of the school and the needs, I really began to move more towards administrative kinds of activities, grant writing and working with the school on general projects. And then I saw that a principal had a chance to still impact the school in a broad way, but even in a more impactful way, because now you're dealing with all the teachers, you're dealing with parents, you're dealing with the community. And that was an interest of mine. So sometime around my 5th year of teaching, I went back to the University of Illinois and finished my doctorate in education. And then when I came back, I moved into school administration. And that's where I spent my last 15 years.
Fantastic. How important is parental involvement in the educational process?
It's fundamental. It's absolutely fundamental. The piece that's very interesting about public education is that many times a kid's zip code determines their success, and especially the way that Illinois is structured with the property taxes and those sorts of things from the community. You can look at a zip code and see that a kid has many more opportunities than other. But the one factor is, even though you could live in a community that doesn't have a lot of resources, the one factor the research consistently shows that if parents are strongly involved, then a lot of that can be made up despite of the economics. And so parental involvement is crucial, and it's very clear in the research that where parents are involved, kids excel and do better. And where parents leave it all to the schools, then some kids make it through just fine, but many kids don't. So parental involvement is key.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, we're talking with Dr. Maurice Byrd, a distinguished educator, now retired from the Zion Elementary School System. Dr. Byrd, there's a lot of talk about diversity in the school systems. How important is diversity? And I give an example. I know the Great Lakes Naval Training Center, the students there attend the North Chicago school system, but students in North Chicago school system probably never left North Chicago and don't know anything else about the global world. But the advent of the students in from Great Lakes, because they travel all over the world, provide a great input into the school district. So how important is diversity?
I would say extremely important. The world has become smaller over the years. Just some 30 years ago, in the classroom, if you didn't read about it in a book or occasional video or program, you really didn't have a chance to have access to it. But with the increase in internet and the capability, you can literally be in any country, any place, just in a matter of seconds by observation, and by some good imagination. And so I think what happens in schools is that students are naturally friendly to each other. They're friendly to various cultures. The whole multicultural piece and trying to make that happen is more of a piece of my generation, sort of the baby boomers, where it was kind of unique to us, being, say, the first African-American to attend a school, predominantly white school, which I was in 7th grade, and trying to maneuver through those issues. And the adults seemed to have more issues with that than the kids. I just jumped in, and those kids became my friends. Even though they lived across the boulevard from me, they became my friends. But so from my experience, my horizon was increased tremendously by being able to meet those other students across the boulevard and the diverse experiences that they had. They were just as excited to come over to where we live and to learn the kinds of things that we did and the foods that we ate. And it just made you have a more global sense. So I think that when you're in a more diverse environment, you begin to understand other people. You begin to accept them as where they are. You become more community-minded, less selfish, because you have the opportunity to really learn about people and learn that everybody brings some value to the plate. So schools that emphasize that naturally in their curriculum, or that have students who've had that sense of diversity, excel much in a much greater way than people who are very narrow-minded or kind of linear in their training and observation.
You mentioned about the zip codes and the children on the other side of the boulevard, but resources make a big difference. I know in Lake County we have like North Chicago, Waukegan, Zion on the eastern shore. The $6,000 or $7,000 per student, may be what they have for education, whereas the school districts or the zip codes south of us may have 12, 13, up to $16,000, $17,000 per student. So that will make a great impact on the learning process for the children, right?
Sure. You're exactly right. You would find some people in the research who would try to say that dollars don't make sense. You can throw more dollars in, but it won't make a difference. But the reality of it is that dollars means resources, and resources mean availability to things that are just non-negotiable, such as technology, the ability to have and to learn from people who are highly trained and who are well educated, and all those pieces of the puzzle become very, very important. A lot of the research is very clear about a teacher that's prepared and his or her ability to impact students' learning compared to a teacher who does not have the resources and who has not been as nearly prepared. So without question, that the zip code piece really plays a key division in the kids that are able to get the resources they need to achieve, and the students who are really being naturally challenged and given materials to move them into the next level.
Tell us about testing, how important testing is in educational process, because there are teachers that teach just to pass tests.
Sure.
And that has a great impact too on the learning.
It's been interesting. In my career, when I started 30 years ago, students were given a rather simple battery of assessments, and decisions were made about student growth from that. Schools weren't really compared, or communities weren't really compared at the time. It just was sort of more for the individual student need. And really fundamentally, and most of my job as assistant superintendent dealt with assessment. Fundamentally, assessment should be about student growth and about seeing where a student is and how the student is progressing through the curriculum that they need to progress through. Some would say unfortunately, and some would say fortunately, but education during those early years did not have a high rate of accountability where schools or teachers or principals are held accountable for student performance. So what happens is when you go back to the zip code piece, if you're in a community where the community is not highly valuing education, or if the school does not have to highly value education because no one's really watching or paying attention, then it becomes a little easier not to really hold kids accountable and to really push kids forward. So I saw the early pieces of high stakes testing come in probably around 1990, when people began to really look at the data and begin to realize that there are a bunch of kids being left behind. There are a bunch of kids who are not performing. And unfortunately, in any industry, whether it's public or corporate or whatever, goals are set and goals are determined by some kind of accountability piece. And usually in schools, the most common piece is the testing process. So what's happened is testing has become more and more involved. There used to be a time where a test was not given to a kid below sixth grade, not a high stakes test. Now you have high stakes tests at students in 3 or 4 years old, and the system has become very, very test driven, and no one has seemed to have found an answer yet to really addressing how much testing, when is it too much, when is it too little, and trying to get back to the purpose. And again, what tends to happen is students in high performing communities perform well on the test, so there's not really too much of a concern about that. The concern becomes in lower performing schools where students are not performing well, and the gap is becoming wider and wider in the achievement. So as a result, there's always a constant opportunity trying to look and see what can we do to make sure the schools are held accountable. So the testing piece has really, in my opinion, has gotten out of control because we're constantly trying to challenge ourselves to see if kids are performing well, but we can't quite. Every kid is different, so you can't just use one test to be an end all be all. You have to look at the bigger picture. But in all parts of our community, we expect tangible results, and so I think it's a question that's going to be out there, and it's going to be reviewed and hopefully improved to the point that testing is not done to the extreme, but that it's done for the purpose that is really intended for initially.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, we're talking with Dr. Maurice Byrd, a retired educator in Zion Elementary Schools. By the way, you've been retired for how long now?
This is my second year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my wife and I both worked in Zion, so we finished a year and a half ago. So this is beginning the second year.
Okay. Your wife was she in administration? Was she a school teacher?
She we met in Hampton in school, and she was a music teacher as well for a few years. And after about 3 years, she moved into the classroom and taught kindergarten through third grade and various grades over the years. So she ended her career as a first grade teacher at elementary school in Zion.
It's something special about music too. My kids are involved in music too. Matter of fact, all three of them. One The oldest one plays oboe and clarinet and drums, piano. So she does it all. Yolanda Brooks, I don't know who you know or not.
Yeah, Yolanda. Sure.
Okay, sure. And then my son played the saxophone, and he still plays organ with his church. And because my youngest is a principal there in North Chicago, she sings in a choir,
Yeah.
But the wife and I have no musical ability at all,
It skipped a generation. Yeah.
Right. But it's something about music, though. It does something to the soul, though.
Yes.
Tell us about music for everyone. Can benefit from music, though.
Sure. I as I mentioned earlier, I never saw myself being but a music teacher and enjoying that job, because it was just absolutely amazing to get the most difficult kids in the school to come in, and to just by playing a song or doing an activity in music, they would calm down, they would get involved, and they would be successful. And so what music provides is just kind of an outlet from sort of the mundane things of day-to-day responsibilities. You can always find a song or find a tune that can just calm you down and put you sort of in a pleasant place. And so I really I was fortunate that Zion has always been a community that has a pretty good, strong emphasis on music.
Okay.
And while music is often cut in many schools, the first thing to go on budget cuts, especially at the lower levels, it really, it's really a value. And so when school boards kind of realize that, there's actually been many studies done that the schools that have had a higher degree of absenteeism and behavior issues and things of that nature, when you look back, there's no fine arts in place. The kids come and they're in front of a book, and it's a kind of a mundane existence, and compared to schools that have increased and have done a good job with their music programs, where kids have something to look forward to. It's a holistic thing. It just can't be one-sided, all about the books or all about the academics. You got to build the whole child, and music does help with that affective side, which is so important.
Yes, President Bush thought he had a cure for the education. It is a program they instituted, No Child Left Behind. Would you give us some, discuss that?
Yeah, well, that No Child Left Behind kept me employed for many years, so I guess I can't totally complain about it because I started my administration career in Zion with having to implement No Child Left Behind in Zion.
Okay.
So in 2001, all districts were required to begin to address the various pieces of that 800 and some odd page law.
Right.
The concept is great. The concept is great, and you would be hard pressed to find anyone to say that it's acceptable to leave children behind. Right. Unfortunately, what often happens in congressional decisions is people make decisions who don't have the day-to-day experience with the community and with working with students. And even though there were some teachers and educators involved in that the panel to make the law, they would sort of make it clear that it was very, very, very much of a political move, more so than it was a move really for the students. So the law has expired as we know it, because it was only on the books for about 10 years. And now it's time for reauthorization of the law. And so my hopes is that as the discussions are going now, that it's going to be made more practical, meaning that first of all, it meets a kid where they are, and instead of making the high stakes test as the only measurement of success, looking at the other picture, looking at where do they start, what kind of raw materials do they walk in the door with, and then from that point, definitely holding the school accountable for moving the kid along. But currently, it does not do that. It's an expectation that everybody is in the same place in a period of time, regardless of where they started. And then there are other pieces that are kind of punitive to districts that if the students are not making the strides on the high stakes test, then they lose hundreds of thousands of dollars that are then given to outside organizations to come in to try to make those same services happen. And what we often see from those experiences is you have a lot of companies who are starting to run those services, but they don't have the knowledge base. Many of them don't have the passion in order to really make the difference. So it ends up becomes a lot of money out there, and with very, very little gain. And so those pieces I know are the main two controversial pieces in the law, and they're being looked at. So I'm hoping the reauthorization considers that, yes, we still want kids to move forward, but we also want to learn from the mistakes of the past and learn from educators who are out there in the field who can give you some input as to what works and what's not working.
Dr. Byrd, that was another Bush, too. I think he's the governor of the state of Florida, Ned Bush, I believe. He had introduced what they call it, a fat cat test.
Yes.
And I don't know what fat cat is. There is an acronym for it, but you probably heard of it there. And that testing program was very serious because if a person didn't pass the test, they didn't graduate from high school. Right?
Exactly.
So that was a serious. That's another. You mentioned about it, not just the tests that proves the success in education.
Exactly. That's all. That's part of the whole No Child Left Behind piece. That Florida Achievement Test. Which is really, really very, very controversial because students who did not pass it, you're exactly right. They were sort of out. What happened though is that no one bothered to look deeper at the research to realize that retention as an overall measure does not work. Does not work. And students who retain 9 out of 10 are going to drop out and or lose their interest or invest in education. And so what happens is you can put kids out of school just because of an isolated test. But you're definitely going to have more problems with social issues. You're going to have kids who are unemployed and kids who are not making good choices because they haven't had the educational opportunity. So really there has to be a balance. And again, if a kid walks into 10th grade and doesn't have 10th grade skills because for whatever reason, it's much better to address where they are and help them to be successful as opposed to giving them a test which you know they're going to fail, and then saying, you failed, so you need to repeat 10th grade again and again. And eventually the kid's going to say, there's no, what's the point here? And then we look at crime and we look at other issues in society and wonder what happened. Well, a lot of our policies have created those issues.
Dr. Byrd, also, there's some data that shows that if a child is having difficulty in reading by the third grade, that child is going to, end up probably in another system, which is maybe the prison system. And that's because each year the child gets further and further behind, and pretty soon in high school, like I said, maybe by the 10th grade, they're going to get discouraged and drop out. And once they drop out, and they're going to get involved in other activities that's going to cause them to become incarcerated.
Exactly.
Now, we have a group in South Lake County called Reading Power. I don't know if you heard of that.
Yes.
And they look at early detection of reading problems, and it appears to be very successful in the North Chicago schools. They got a grant, I believe it's about 150 to 60 volunteers that go into the schools there in North Chicago. And I think it's excellent because you mentioned about the dropout problem, because the prison system is just waiting. As a matter of fact, it's now becoming privatized now.
Exactly.
I'd like to just move a little bit further. The GED program, as we know it, I guess there's going to be major changes. I guess maybe is that because of funding and so forth that it's not going to be provided by CLC. Used to come into provide instructors and also for teaching GED and giving the tests and so forth. But it's going to be electronic now. It's going to be
sure. Yeah, I think part of it is funding, but when you dig deeper, it's all part of the whole accountability piece. And what it's really going back to fundamentally is that those high stakes tests are getting harder and trickier and for students to pass, and the funding is not being made available for those kinds of things. And so it's really going to be you're going to find fewer and fewer people who are going to be able to get their GED.
Okay.
And I'm afraid we're going to create a whole citizenry of people who are haven't got their education in place and who are going to really have a lot of issues. So that's not good news at all. That those things are being cut.
Is that nationally, or is it locally that the funds are cut?
Well, the whole sequester in the federal government is sort of the backdoor reason behind this, because a lot of those dollars are in the education department for adult basic education programs and things of that nature. So those are the programs. Really, it's really very political in nature, because it's saying that a lot of those social service based programs are not really in favor with a lot of congressional representatives. So as a result, as those programs are cut, you're going to see those kinds of services cut in the communities, and that's an example of that.
Wow. Well, I want to end up on a good note. But the dropout problem is a major problem, and because it causes other negative elements, in every community, and it boils down to the wife and I have an alternative school, and last year we had 60 students because of those have been expelled and suspended and so forth. And we turn those kids around because our kids, the students around, because we have individualized instruction. And this is a key there too. Sure. If the kids are not getting individualized instruction and not getting assistance from family, because we have so many families where babies raising babies and this type of thing, and don't get the support that they need. And we had cases where the students are sleeping in cars, and just we have a really major problem. And someone really just don't understand the problem in higher places, right?
Sure, I agree. On a positive note, it's the kind of work that you're doing, and people who are really committed to making sure that students have the opportunity is where we're going to see the success. And that's the only place we're going to see the success, because, I would venture an experiment that the same child in, say, a very affluent community and a child in a poor community being given the same opportunities are going to have opportunities to excel. Okay. Someone has to kind of fill the gap. And so the kinds of things that you're describing with community members who are seeing the need and coming together to make that happen is exactly how we're going to have the success that we need to see in the education. Dr.
Byrd, what do you do in your leisure time?
Lots of travel and vacationing, and love to read and do some volunteer work.
Reading is so important, right?
And most certainly.
Like you say, they picked the great title, Reading is Power.
Exactly, I agree.
There's no doubt. And your wife along with you, you both travel together?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, what about children now? You have...
Yep. My oldest daughter lives here in Gurnee, works at Hewitt Aon, and is really involved in our church and doing things around. She's recently married. My youngest daughter is just finished graduate school at Boston University with a degree in public health and social work. So she's out there working, doing some research out of the university.
Speaking of church, I know I interviewed your pastor, your new pastor there, Paul Young. Sitting in the same seat you're sitting there not too long ago, and also on the TV program. Also, Lamont Taylor there is an elder, I guess. Yes. Elder. He's a good friend of mine, and I guess I was a speaker at one of your youth. You were there when so I'm quite familiar with the Shalom Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is located at 1105 Pine Street in Waukegan, Illinois, where you are a musician there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
This is fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, the eloquent voice you have been hearing is Dr. Maurice Byrd, exemplary person. He's a retired educator from Zion Elementary Schools, and he volunteered to come down to the studio to share his experiences and education with us. This has been Community Focus. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks Sr., your host.